The shirt really makes my man titties come out, doesn't it?
Sweatshirt activate!
Okay, now we're done. I don't want to keep harping on The Last of Us Part 2, and in The Last of Us Part 2's defense, it isn't the worst game I've ever played, but it's pretty terrible. So I guess there's no defense. There's literally no defense. I was kind of perusing Polygon and Kotaku like I do for a nice laugh or a nice chuckle, and I found this article on Polygon specifically called "The Personal Experiences That Lev and Yara's Actors Brought to The Last of Us Part 2." Isn't that like the male plural? So isn't that sexist? And since one of these characters is trans and a trans male, and then the other one's a girl, isn't that like gender suppression or gender oppression or something? Fucking racist people at Polygons, bigots over there. Anyway, I found this article, and man, if I really wanted to mock it, and I thought at first, I was like, oh, this is going to be hilarious. It's going to be so social justice filled, and it's just going to be a bunch of bullshit, and let's mock it, let's make fun of it. And the more and more I read it, the more I felt sorry for these people. Obsessed with gender and identity politics, obsessed with their sexuality, like it makes them some sort of martyr. It's really sad. And just to see the exploitation of Naughty Dog on this transgender person, it's pretty sick. Both Ian Alexander and Victoria Grace had never worked on a video game before, and neither had any prior experience with performance capture. However, in a recent interview with Polygon, both agreed that playing the Seraphite siblings in The Last of Us Part 2 was one of the most transformative experiences they've ever had. Alexander plays Lev, a former member of the in-game extremist religion sect called the Seraphites. He accompanies Abby throughout much of her journey. Alexander previously had live-action acting roles in Netflix's original series, The OA, as Buck Vu, and Vic in the 2018 film Every Day. So I looked up these shows. The OA was planned originally to have 5 seasons and was canceled by Netflix after the 2nd season. If you're getting canceled by Netflix, your show sucks. I'm sorry. And then the film Every Day, I never had heard of it. I don't know any of the actors in it. So this actor, Ian Alexander, who plays Lev, Abby's companion, is clearly not that big of an actor or an actress, as I should correctly say. Naughty Dog actually reached out to him directly. Well, almost directly. At the time, Alexander didn't have any representation. So Naughty Dog hires a person without any management or acting representation and who has been in 2 failed projects. And granted, more failed projects on Netflix than I've been on. So I just want to say that there's nothing wrong with being on a project that fails. We all go through life and things fail, and you just keep moving on. You just keep finding new things to do and new things to try. So no hate on this person. Really, what I'm trying to shine a light on here is how shitty Naughty Dog is. Naughty Dog contacted the OA's director, Zal Batmanlige, say that 4 times fast, in order to ask him to pass on information about the role of Lev to Alexander and his mother. While he didn't live in LA at the time, Alexander submitted a few self-taped auditions, and then he booked the role. Alexander told Polygon that he spent the next 3 years working on The Last of Us Part 2, during which time he felt incredibly supported and appreciated by the Naughty Dog team. I remember feeling so special to have been selected for the role of Lev and having an opportunity to bring my own lived experiences as a trans person to the table. Does nobody see what Naughty Dog's doing here? Seriously? This is what I think. Okay, this is what I think happened. Neil Druckmann, or whoever was writing the script, is watching the OA one night on Netflix, just having shit on in the background, sees this person and is like, I think that's a transgender character, or whatever. And then they reach out, go out of their way to get a transgender person to play the transgender character in their identity politics game. Now, some would say that that is typecasting, and it is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with typecasting necessarily. Like, let's say you wanted to have a movie starring in, you know, Chinatown or something, and you want Chinese actors and actresses. Okay, that's fine. They make the experience seem more real, more fulfilling. That's totally cool with me. But this is a fictional game stuffed with left-wing propaganda, and they're literally utilizing this character, this human being, to project and to fulfill their own agenda. I just think that's disgusting. Am I the only one? Come on. It would be like if I made a cartoon about how I can't even think of anything because I'm not that type of person, or I'm just an idiot, one or the other. Grace, on the other hand, said that she was already familiar with The Last of Us and was well aware of the first game's achievements and accolades within the video game industry. She played the role of Yara, the older sister of Lev. Her mother had actually found the opportunity through a job listing that contained a character breakdown. At the time, The Last of Us Part 2 was described under a code name and blah, blah, blah. She got invited to the motion capture stage for a callback. She met Neil Druckmann and acted a few scenes out with Laura Bailey and Haley Gross. Eventually, Grace found out she landed the role and was happy because, yes, Yara's description in the initial job posting had resonated with her, and she was immediately attached to Yara because of her strength, bravery, and selflessness. Okay, Yara is like barely in the game, and then when she shows up finally, they just murder her. Her character breakdown described how she was willing to sacrifice everything she's ever known for her younger brother. After reading it, I admired her and everything she stood for. Okay, you know, she did sacrifice a lot. Honestly, Yara was way better than Lev. Grace is the youngest of 5 siblings. She noted that her views about family unconsciously carried over to her portrayal of Yara. Of course, Grace can't relate to being an older sibling, much less living in a zombie apocalypse. However, she described how her close bonds with her own family allowed her to better understand the motivations behind Yara's actions to protect Lev in The Last of Us Part 2's brutal world. I would take a hammer to the arm for any of my siblings, and I know they would do the same. Would they? Would you? That very first scene introducing Lev and Yara was especially memorable for Grace. It's quite an explosive entrance for both characters. Being thrown into an action sequence immediately was exhilarating, Grace recalled. I got knocked down on the mats, it got to kill people with styrofoam hammers, and I got to scream my heart out. It was a blast. When Grace wasn't filming, she was watching, whatever. Okay, that actually sounds fun. I think this sounds like a great job. I'm happy for both of these people pursuing their career and doing what they love. That's amazing. Good for them. I just think that it's a little shallow to only hire them because they're trans or only hire them because they're Asian. Like that's what the characters were. They were like these kind of, if you haven't played the game, they're kind of Asian looking or whatever. And never once was I, when I was playing, was I like, look at the Asians. I just thought there was this fucking other tribe or whatever you want to call them, and they were, you know, against the wolves and against Ellie, and you know, it was just another faction of the game. It didn't really care where they came from or who they were. And the fact that they're transgender or Asian or women is not why I would relate to them or not relate to them in the first place. Why I didn't relate to any of these characters is because they were all shitty, awful people. And I want to talk about Ghost of Tsushima in relation to this once we get to the end of the article. A big turning point in both Grace and Alexander's journey was the PlayStation Experience 2017 event, or PSX, which I think I actually went to. This was when both Yara and Lev were publicly introduced to the first time to fans. For Alexander in particular, he felt empowered by all the support that the community showed him during the event. A fan actually came out as trans to Alexander during a signing portion of an event and told Alexander that they were so happy to see a character like Lev included in their favorite game franchise of all time. I remember seeing how their face lit up at the moment that they saw the transgender symbol necklace I was wearing. Alexander explained, "It makes me smile to be able to provide authentic trans-masculine representation for other people like me." I mean, I think people should be able to represent whatever they want, but let's not forget how high the suicide rate is in the transgender community. It's a very serious thing. I want these people to be taken care of. I do. I want them to be happy and healthy, but I don't think it's something that we need to promoting as a totally healthy lifestyle. I just don't understand why you would want to do that. Granted, I wouldn't treat you differently if you did want to do that. I just think forcing this representation down everybody's throats in order to perpetuate your agenda is shitty. Either way, like if it was happening on a right-wing cultural level, I wouldn't want that either. But all I'm trying to say is I doubt that kid that came up to Alexander was trans. I bet you it was just a fucking kid who is confused, just like we all are when we're kids, and we're trying to figure out who we want to be. And then you see something that you like as brave and stunning, and it's getting all this media attention, and you want to do that. That's what I think when I hear that. Alexander told me that his prior acting experiences playing trans characters prepared him to handle critique. So he's been playing trans characters his whole time, and he's had 3 roles: the OA, the Everyday. That's what his Wikipedia and his IMDb says. And now The Last of Us 2. So what? You're only a transgender character? How is that acting? I mean, I guess it's fine, but it just seems so, I don't know, it seems so limiting. It seems so boring. That's all you want to be, is a transgender thing? Like a transgender talking piece for your entire career? How lame. Who cares what your identity is sexually? People are so much more than that. There's so much more than that. And I've met tons of people and I've done tons of crazy things in my life. And not once when I was talking to a person did I give a shit what their sexual identity. And it's not because I want to take that away from them. It's because I just don't think that's very interesting. I don't. I find that to be very limiting on a person's characteristics. there's intelligence, there's lived experience, there's childhood trauma, there's so many things that make up a person and who they are, and the culmination of that is what determines if you're a good person or a bad person, and or how the culmination of those lived experiences and your perception of them, how you've handled them, that's what makes you a good person. Not just being trans and being Mormon when you were a child and then not wanting to be Mormon. It's not stunning and brave. That means you're just figuring out shit. It doesn't matter. His parents struggled to accept his own gender identity even as he took the roles on in the OA and Everyday. Well, he's an actor, so he can act as a transgender person. That put a spotlight on the trans experience. Alexander described how he was able to draw from his own personal experiences when portraying Buck Vu and Vic, respectively. Portraying Lev was much more rigorous adventure than his previous ones, he said. How? Because you had to do more acting? And that, because it wasn't entirely about him being trans. I mean, that was the like premise of Lev's character, but it wasn't the whole thing. Each role I've played has felt like an extension of myself, because that's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're just being yourself on screen. It's not acting. You're a reality TV star. And so I definitely felt like Lev was the braver post-apocalyptic version of myself. What the fuck does that even mean? Oh my God. Lev's storyline and portrayal as a trans character in The Last of Us Part 2 has inspired a lot of deep analysis, particularly, God, I hate that word. Particularly around the way that Lev's status as a trans person is revealed. The other Seraphites called Lev by his birth name. Waverly at Paste Magazine described Lev's storyline as a trans narrative as told through a cisgender voyeur lens. Where am I living? Am I on Neptune right now? Is Neptune even a planet anymore? Other critics, like frequent Polygon contributor Carolyn Petit praised the game for portraying Lev as someone who doesn't hate himself and believes he deserves better. Alexander told me that he completely understands where people are coming from in their criticism. Trans representation is still a new concept to a large number of executives in the entertainment industry. Alexander said that he feels providing full agency for trans characters to disclose their gender identities can make for powerful storylines when told through a trans person's perspectives. Okay, that's just wrong, dude. Trans representation is not a new concept, only because representation as a whole is not a new concept. Maybe the fact that more transgenders are in TV and shit is like a new thing, but it's just a trend. It's a trend for these executives to make money. That's exactly what fucking Naughty Dog is doing. They're making money off of your oppression. And now I don't really give a shit because I don't think you guys are oppressed, and I don't really give a shit because these companies can do whatever they want. But the fact that you're on the same side as these people trying to milk you for every dollar you're worth is fucking disgusting, and the fact that you don't see the hypocrisy is insane. Alexander also explained that he felt like The Last of Us Part 2 accurately portrays his own personal experience dealing with transphobia in real life, as well as his own personal turmoil over the religion he grew up in, Mormonism, and his acceptance of his own gender identity. From my perspective, as a trans masculine person who has faced transphobic discrimination as a result of religion and overall ignorance, there you go. Just fucking bash them over the head. It's not uncommon for me to be misgendered by a stranger or from someone from my past, he explained. And he said that he personally did not feel triggered or re-traumatized by the use of Lev's birth name during the game. However, he also clarified that his experience is solely his own and he cannot speak for everyone on behalf of the trans community, which is totally fair, and you shouldn't. And that's why this whole thing that Naughty Dog's doing is just gross, shoving identity politics in the game. The rest of the article is pretty stupid because it just talks about Grace, and that's not really what I wanted to focus on here. And I think Grace is actually pretty normal. She just seems like she's happy to be part of the game, and you can read the article for yourself. It's on Polygon. I'm not trying to hide it from you or anything or avoid certain topics, but that's just not really what I wanted to cover. The whole point of this is Naughty Dog exploited transgender identity to perpetuate their agenda in their game. They went out of their way to hire a no-name actor for a AAA huge game that was supposed to be Sony's swan song. And it just shows you how out of touch these people are, and they think that sexual identity and LGBT politics are super important when most of the country is just like, dude, do whatever the fuck you want. Just leave me alone. And then they force this shit down your throat. Now, I'm going to put out a review, a sort of review / why I think the Ghost of Tsushima is the best game of the PlayStation 4 generation and why it's so important. And I will be comparing The Last of Us 2 in that review. So look out for that on the channel. But I do have a couple of talking points about the Ghost of Tsushima and how it relates to Lev, Abby, Ellie, and all these other characters from The Last of Us 2. When I was playing the Ghost of Tsushima, I don't know why that game's story resonated with me a lot. I think it's just because of the place I'm in my life right now, and then the virus, and I just uprooted everything I knew and I moved to Ohio. And that's literally like what happens to Jin. He is thinking he is on one path, and then in the middle of the game, something happens and everything in his life gets turned upside down like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And it's fucking an amazing game. And I just resonated with that character so hard, not because he's in the middle of a war with Mongols and he's a Japanese samurai. None of that matters to me because that's not who I am. I'm not fucking Japanese. I'm not a fucking samurai. I'm not in a war with Mongols. I'm not sneaking up on people and slitting their throats in the middle of the night. Like, of course not. That's not what relatability is. It's about the character and their journey. When I saw some characters die in Ghost of Tsushima, it impacted me because these characters had depth. They had meaning. They came together and bonded over something. And not only that, there were other characters that argued with their goal. But the thing is, everybody had the same goal that they were striving for, and there were different ways and that they wanted to achieve those goals. And it was amazing. And it was so powerful. And it really felt like you were playing a movie, and these characters were so deep, and even if some of their reasonings were trivial, it still showed you that they're flawed human beings. And I really resonated with it, and I almost cried a couple times in the middle of the game. It was so powerful to me. Now, it doesn't have to be that way for you, but when I hear that it's about on-screen representation, you have to see black characters in order to relate to it. Or there's too many white people on screen, nobody can relate to it. That's just a load of shit. Some of the best movies that people relate to are like Braveheart, where you have Mel Gibson riding on a horse talking about war and people love it. Or what about The Lord of the Rings? Or what about Game of Thrones? Those are fictional shows with fictional plots about dragons and orcs, and people relate to it because it's about overcoming something that is so hard that most humans can't do it, and it's supposed to be special. It doesn't matter if you're white, green, black, blue, yellow. No one cares. And the fact that these people are missing that when they created The Last of Us Part 1, which was the epitome of that, is just fucking mind-blowing. And I just don't understand how people who aspire to this agenda don't see the hypocrisy from Hollywood and the games industry when they're trying to perpetuate this shitty agenda on the people. It's just maddening. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.